Have you ever had one of your friends say, "Bro, these are just mocks, I'll study for the real exams"? This kind of reminds me of my past because throughout GCSEs and even in my first year of A-level, so last year, I kept thinking that mocks are kind of useless because what really matters is the end result. But this year, I cannot make the same excuse because my predicted grades completely depend on my mocks. So basically, if I do not do well in my mocks, my predicted grades won't be good, and you need good grades for universities, obviously. So I cannot use the same excuse I did in GCSEs and A levels. But I was thinking about it. Mocks are actually something really important. I'll come to that in a bit, but first, I need you to understand, especially if you're in GCSEs and A levels, I need you to understand why mocks are actually important and how they can benefit you in the long run. And the simple answer is not only do they help you track your progress and see how you're getting along the syllabus, they also give you a short idea on how your actual exam is going to look like. Sitting in the exam hall, not seeing those questions before and then just attempting the paper. It kind of gives you the hint of, the actual board exam and what you're going to be doing in that. So how exactly do you ace your mocks? And in today's video, I'm just going to be sharing you the 3-step plan that I made for myself that I'm going to be using for the next month or just a bit more than a month to make sure that I excel in my mock results. So I'm going to be sharing with you guys, and if you do like it, feel free to try it out as well. Step number 1 of the 3-step plan is basically revise the content. Now this may seem to you, oh, this is so obvious, anyone can just revise the content, but that's not exactly what I mean. You see, different subjects require different ways of studying. You can't study maths the same way you study chemistry, you can't study chemistry the same way you study physics, you can't study physics the same way you study maths. It doesn't work like that. So first of all, figure out what method you're going to use for which subject. For example, for chemistry, the thing I'm going to be doing is I'm not going to make my own notes, I'm not going to read the textbook blankly. What I'm going to do is basically, you can go to ChemRevise and you can download ready-made notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to download those notes, and I'm going to read through the textbook, and I'm going to make sure that I make note of everything that's in the textbook that's not in the ChemRevise notes. Once I'm done that, I'm going to revise everything, and I'm going to make sure I understand each and everything. You can sometimes doze off while learning, but the most important thing is you should know what's going on. You should be able to, if someone asks you, can you explain this to me? You should be able to explain it, because that's how learning works. When you're able to understand the concept, when you're able to visualize whatever is going on. So that's what I'm going to do in step 1. If there's any experiments or something like that, I'm going to go onto YouTube and I'm going to search about the experiment and watch it. Because for me, at least, doing something visually really, really helps. So that's what I try to do more. I try to do more visual stuff than memorization or stuff like that. I'll come to that in a bit as well. Then once I've made sure that I've covered every single key concept and I know what I'm doing, I'm going to go ahead and do topical past paper questions. I'm going to do past paper questions to make sure, because what I think is, you don't really learn when you're studying the concept. The real learning happens when you're doing the past paper, because that challenges you, that tricks you. The questions are hard, they're not that easy, they're not straightforward, obviously. So that requires a lot of critical thinking, and then when you're able to answer it, you're gonna be like, oh, this is how you do it. And then the more past papers you do, the more you get the hang of it, and then the easier the stuff becomes for you. So that is what I'm going to be doing for chemistry. So just make sure that you've covered all the content that's coming in your exams, and use the specification to make sure that you've covered absolutely everything that is necessary. Now, step number 2 is topical past paper questions. And it doesn't have to be topical, it can just be normal past paper questions. You can open up a past paper and do yearly, or you can do topical. It's up to you completely. As I said before, past papers are probably the best way to understand if you've understood the concept and if you actually understand the topic, because what they do is they test you on key areas that you might be, when you're doing your notes, you're probably like, oh, this is such a small information, this is probably not going to come up. But that's where the past paper comes in handy, because it will ask you that exact same thing that you ignored before. And another thing, obviously, when you're done with step 1, you're going to come to this step, but for subjects like math, step 1 should not take that long. For chemistry, I understand it might take a bit longer. For physics as well, it will take long. But for maths, it should not take that long, because maths, you're not really memorizing anything. You're not learning a key concept. You're rather, the whole learning process actually for maths happens when you try the questions. Even if you don't understand, the best example that I can give is that if you've learned something in maths, you won't really understand it until you start doing questions. Whereas chemistry, if you do not learn the topic prior and you sit down to do questions, you will never understand it. But with maths, even if you learn a bit and you start doing questions, you might get the hang of it. So that's just how 2 different subjects work. For maths, it's just the more past paper questions you do, the better for you. And literally, with maths, there's no limit. There's a limit for chemistry, physics, because they cannot ask you after a certain extent, because they've covered the entire topic. But for maths, they can just make as many questions as they want, so you'll never get, So you're never going to be running out of questions for math. So do as many as you can. Now, speaking about chemistry and physics, the more past papers you do, you basically they like to repeat key concepts. So you're going to be noticing a pattern that this question comes in last, this question comes in last. For example, in AS physics, I can tell you that at the end of each question for physics paper 2, they ask either they change something in the circuit or whatever the experiment they're doing, and they ask you what's going to be the new result, or they ask you to draw a graph. And this is a trend in every single paper. If you open up a paper of AS physics, you're going to realize the last question is usually for 2 or 3 marks, and it's either a graph or they ask you to explain what happens when they change something. So, once you start doing past papers, you actually get used to it and you understand that, oh, this is what they're doing. And you're going to notice a lot of repeated questions as well. So make sure you make a note of that when you're actually doing the paper, so that when it comes to your mocks, it becomes much easier for you. And number 3, revise the questions. And this is kind of a make or break step. This is what you're going to be doing a day before your actual exam. I can't stress it enough that it is so important that you're stress free and that you don't have any anxiety a day before the exam, because research has shown that the more stressed you are, the more likely you are to forget stuff. So please, the last day, the day before the exam, you're supposed to be taking care of your mental health and not over stressing about everything. Basically, when you're doing, questions a day before, your brain is playing tricks on you saying, oh, you've forgotten everything, and you feel like you've forgotten everything. But when you actually sit down in the exam and you start to do it, everything comes back to you. And trust me, this has happened with me so many times that I do not even panic anymore. Like, if my brain is telling me a day before the exam, oh, you've forgotten everything, I shrug it off and I'm like, when it comes to the exam tomorrow, I'll probably remember. And that's exactly what happens, because you've memorized everything, right? But the thing is, because you're in so much stress, you cannot remember it. But when you're actually in the exam and you're focused, you start to remember stuff, and stuff comes back to you naturally, and that's just how it happens. So please stop taking stress a day before the exam. So the question is, what will I do a day before the exam? It's simple. I would wake up early, but I will make sure that I get 7 to 8 hours of sleep the night before and the night of the exam as well. I'll come to that in a bit. And the thing I would do is, all the questions I was saying, the topical past paper questions, the yearly, I would just sit down and revise them. I would see that, why did this happen? Why did I write this? Where did I get stuff wrong? How can I improve it? If I do not understand the concept, I would, go ahead and watch a video and try to understand the concept properly. I would do one single past paper question, like a whole past paper, or just like 5 questions from topical max. Because the more you do, the more stuff you're going to see that you're going to be unfamiliar with, and you're going to freak yourself out. So it's really not worth it. And then once I'm done, even though my brain is telling me, oh, you're so unprepared and all of that stuff, I'm going to shrug it off. I'm going to go to sleep at 10, 11, whatever it is. I'm going to make sure that I get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, especially before a maths exam, because I cannot tell you how important it is to, make sure that your brain has all of its cognitive ability when you're sitting in the exam, because it is so important for you to be focused and to be able to remember everything that you've learned. So make sure you're getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep the night before as well. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Just get the 7 hours of sleep for optimal performance and go do the exam. Once you come back, you're going to be like, that actually went pretty well, and you're going to thank me, I hope. Anyways, so this is what I'm going to be doing and what I suggest you give a try as well. If you want to try another method, feel free to try it out. I'm just saying what I'm going to be doing and what my experience is going to be like. I'm going to keep sharing it with you guys. And yeah, after the mocks, I'm going to let you know how that went and whether I should have done it, should have not, what can I do better, what can I, do better, or what did I do bad. So I'm going to be sharing all of that with you once my mocks end. So yeah, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to subscribe to the channel, you can subscribe over here. And if you want to watch this video, please go ahead and click over here. I'll see you guys with a new video very, very soon. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.